Once upon a time, vinyl albums were the preeminent format in which music was sold, reaching a peak of over 1 billion units in 1981. Then the bottom dropped out of the vinyl market, and album sales declined. In 1993, they reached a low point of just 300,000 units sold. But since that low, album sales in the US have steadily increased each year, with 9.2 million albums sold in 2014, according to Nielsen SoundScan. So what happened to vinyl sales? And what makes vinyl different from all the other ways that people can listen to music?
Can I have a taste of your ice cream? Can I lick the crumbs from your table? Can I interfere in your crisis? No, mind your own business. No, mind your own business.
Hi, I'm Portia Sabin. On this episode of The Future of What, we're going to talk about the extremely popular Record Store Day. Michael Kurtz helped found the event, and he describes a time when vinyl was dead and buried, literally.
When I was in London, the music industry over there was so excited about CD was what it came. They actually took the lathes and the manufacturing units for vinyl and used them as filler in the foundations of their buildings for the new buildings they were putting up.
Then we'll talk with Darius Van Arman of Secretly Group about how the new global street date is affecting retail sales. But first, let's go to an office about 8 miles south of Portland. It's an industrial warehouse block, and through the front windows of this office, you can see an old jukebox, a coffee maker, and some mismatched chairs around a square table. From the outside, it doesn't look like much of anything goes on here, but on the inside, it's a music first for the Northwest. So let's go in.
Hi, hello. Welcome to Cascade Record Pressing.
That's Amy Dragon, one of the people who's helped launch Cascade Record Pressing. It's the newest vinyl record press in the U.S. and the only one in the Northwest. In the warehouse, there are huge industrial fans, boilers, and other heating and cooling equipment.
All right, so we're in the utility room right here. This houses our air system.
That's Mark Rainey. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Cascade Record Pressing.
So yeah, by the time they come off, you start with a temperature of around 275, 300 for preparing the material. And by the time they land here, surface temp is about 110. And that's just, it's cooled with just ambient water.
Mark walks over to a row of big cardboard boxes on the side of the warehouse. He puts his hand in what looks like a box of black pebbles.
So yeah, that is 100% virgin vinyl. And what that statement means as far as virgin, it is virgin to the record pressing process.
As Mark reaches his hand into the bag, he says you can tell it's virgin vinyl because the skin on his hand didn't turn black. Of course, metaphorically, Mark has a lot of skin in this game. After founding the punk label TKO Records and operating a successful music store in Orange County, he moved up to the Portland area to start making vinyl records. He's helping to build a plant that he says focuses on quality, not quantity. Like in the listening room, there's a turntable, speakers, and a microscope. The microscope is to catch any problems before the records are pressed.
Going where you be, I'm 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 going where you be.
So when we put a record on, we are looking for lead-in, basically. So we want to put the needle down, drop the needle, and make sure that it's tracking correctly as it goes into the grooves. And at that point, we're listening for surface noise. Is there excessive amounts of kind of scratching or hissing or too many cracks or pops? If we're hearing that, we have a microscope here that will pull over onto the track and try to visually inspect the grooves and see, is it just dust? Is it something that might have happened during pressing? Is it something maybe that happened during plating or cutting? Just try to ascertain what the issue is. The other part of that is it happening on every record? So we're checking the audio on multiple records, not just one, and seeing is it an anomaly that just happened with a few, or do we have to go back and try to make an adjustment that's of greater scale. So that is Mississippi Records, and it's various artists, but the release is called Troubled Waters.
Like Mark, Amy is also coming to Cascade from a successful career. She masters records at Telegraph Audio in Portland. They've mastered records for Drag City, New Moss, and Asthmatic Kitty Records. So why did Mark, Amy, and co-owner Adam Gonzalez start Cascade Record Pressing? And how are they making money focusing on quality over quantity? I spoke with them in the office at the pressing plant. My first question for everybody is, what in the heck are you guys doing starting a pressing plant? This is so exciting.
That's what we were counting on, really. I mean, for people kind of outside our circle, yeah, we sound like we're out of our minds. But with Adam and I's background in independent music, it just really made too much sense. I've run a label for almost 20 years. I mean, Adam's been an engineer for over a decade. We both identified Portland as ripe for this type of operation, with just having a very strong local scene, network of labels, independent bands. I mean, this has been a music area since the jump, since Louie Louie. It's kind of nuts that it hadn't happened already. And,
Absolutely.
To our knowledge, I mean, there really hasn't been a functioning pressing plant in the Northwest probably since the early 70s, and never one in Oregon. So here we are.
So these presses that you guys got, you actually got them from a plant in Canada that had gone out of business, correct?
When we got the presses, the plant actually hadn't gone out of business yet.
Oh, they were still operational, but
Yeah.
not with all the presses.
Yeah, and they were on their way out. So there was a lot of presses, and this was, by the way, the end of a very long trip to find presses. It's not like we opened the phone book and looked for presses and
No doubt.
found the Canada guy. So after Mark and I started talking about this in December of 2013.
Wow.
And then there was 10 months, 11 months.
Easily, yeah.
Of us looking, he and I checking in 2 or 3 times a week, following leads all around the world, the Caribbean, Africa, Europe, domestically, obviously. And so, yes, these presses were purchased from Rip V, which is now a closed plant in Canada. But I do want to make the point that it's not like we just called Rip V on the phone and we're like, we'll take, I don't know, 6. And then they, and they packed them up in a FedEx box and sent them to us. Like,
right.
It was a lot of work to get them.
Right. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you guys decided that this was really a viable option for you to actually start a pressing plant in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of a gradual conclusion that we reached. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was, working at my label and sort of observing all the changes and the turmoil and just how, sort of all the old models got thrown out the window in the music industry. And I actually ended up deciding to kind of pull back, take a couple years off from releasing anything, and we opened a retail store. Mm. So I had a few years of just sort of observing, what our customer was doing, what they were buying. And when I opened the store, I got a lot of advice from people who've been in the industry for a while, and they were all saying, oh, you've got to stock clothing and all these lunch boxes and all this other crap that I wasn't interested in selling. And by trial and error, I found that wasn't the case, and that vast majority, over 90% of the sales to the register were for vinyl. Mm. And I saw that over the years that the numbers keep increasing, and then there was the whole advent of Record Store Day,
right? And
sort of tracking the trajectory of that as well. And just, what I was able to, as far as the releases we started putting out again on our label, and how we went from, doing a lot of vinyl, but also kind of anchored by CDs, and sort of CDs sort of paying all the bills, and vinyl just being, something we were doing to keep it real and where our hearts were, to totally abandoning CDs and becoming a vinyl-only operation, pretty much. You couple that with, just, when I'd be talking to my peers and other people who run labels and just sort of hearing the horror stories of what they were enduring, as the demand for new vinyl increased, and as, more and more of the domestic plants especially just getting completely congested, and especially for the smaller indies. I mean, just, the labels that had been, and the types of operations that had really kept the vinyl industry alive all through the downturn, being kind of shut out because the majors were back. It seemed like an opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think the point can be overstated too much. Now that vinyl's hot again on a broader scale, and Urban Outfitters and Amazon sell a lot of vinyl, and you have, there's represses of Fleetwood Mac Rumors, right, which does not need to be repressed, right? You can get that record
That is correct.
in any record store on physically on the planet Earth and maybe a couple on the moon for $1.
Yes.
And, there's movie soundtracks that are double or triple disc or, all this kind of stuff. And our people who were sustaining vinyl through the downturn, which frankly are indie rock, metal, punk, hip hop, and dance music. Those are the people who made vinyl and who bought vinyl.
Right.
Rain or shine.
Very true.
Through my lifetime.
We were there.
Yeah. They're all getting squeezed out because it's more appealing to, take an order for 30,000 units than it is to take an order for 1,000 units.
Okay, so let's say Warner or whoever owns Fleetwood Mac comes to you guys and says, listen, we love you guys. You have to put out this, you have to run this 50,000 copies of Rumors or whatever. What would you say?
Well, first of all, Stevie Nicks would actually have to come.
Yeah.
That would be totally contingent to make the deal. But nothing to that scale. But we have had, because of Mark's history in the music industry and his history with the label, we've had interest from larger parties. And, so far it's kind of been a thanks but no thanks situation. Again, going back to the people that we're trying to serve. Thankfully, there are plenty of independent artists and labels who need records made. And part of what got us in this, and by us I mean the music industry and vinyl consumers and music lovers, part of what got us in this situation where at some plants a record takes 6 or 8 months to make is, this just saying yes to whatever comes in the door. Like, oh yeah, like the Great Gatsby soundtrack double LP. Like, we need 100,000 copies of that. Like, yeah, man, let me cash that check. So our attitude about what releases we're going to accept for record store days is part of that. We don't like telling people no, and I'm not going to put a hard line in the sand and say, we will unilaterally reject this type of job because every job is different. But there's people out there who are interested in helping, and we want to help them. And that's, I think, why, aside from being a good friend of Mark's and wanting to help, that's where I wanted to be useful and why I kind of got involved. Because in Amy and I's capacity, Amy, in addition to being the assistant plan manager, is also my assistant at Telegraph Mastering. She's an engineer as well. You notice all the difficulty that clients have, super long wait times, like not good customer service. I mean, Amy could probably speak a little bit more to it.
I think it's daunting for a lot of the people that we talk to, a lot of the independent artists and smaller labels that are just, I think, surprised, some of them still, who maybe haven't put out a record in a while, or just daunted at the times that they have to wait and all of the things that can happen to their detriment when they can't get their release out in a timely way.
And the poor customer service, as you mentioned, I think that's especially perfect. We did a record store day release for this year, and it was a double LP, and several customers contacted us afterwards and said they had 2 copies of the same album in the 2 different sleeves, and the pressing plant that we had worked with said, too bad.
Right.
That was their response. Sorry about that.
So that's unfortunately like a kind of a common horror story. Like Amy and I had a client last year where like they've shipped records with the wrong labels on them. They've given clients the wrong record.
Oh my God.
You
I've
open
heard of
up,
that
it's
too.
like your correct jacket and you take it out, you're like, this is another band's record.
Yes.
Like, how did that happen? And frankly, you have precisely zero leverage.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
There's nothing that you can do.
Right.
If you have a relationship with someone at the plant and they are nice to you or maybe take pity on you, then congratulations, you won. But getting, from what we were being told, like getting somebody on the phone, who gives a shit is harder and harder and harder.
Right, and to clarify, those of us, as you said, the labels and the artists that have been sustaining the vinyl resurgence in the last 10 years or so, we press 1,000, 2,000 copies. Yeah. You can't compete when Sony comes in with 30,000, 50,000 copies of something. I mean, how can you expect to be paid attention to?
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect to be paid attention to if you're
well, neither do I, but I'm saying that would be their rationale, one would assume.
I mean, there's last summer there was a plant that we were sending lacquers to, and they were getting back to our clients and saying, oh, well, we just accepted the job for the Kiss reissue catalog. They're repressing every Kiss record.
The whole catalog?
Yeah. And so they're just like, so their wait time, I mean, they straight up told the client on the phone, they're like, yeah, you're not really going to be able to get your record here, man. I mean,
Yeah, how about just go somewhere else?
Kind of, yeah.
Wow.
And so we made that other place.
I mean, and we're really hoping are planning on being informed by our experience through this whole process and sort of, we know how we as customers didn't like being treated as plants. So we're kind of taking a cue from that as far as how we're going to interact with the people we're running jobs for.
That's very exciting. Have you found, Amy, especially in dealing with people, with customers so far, are people just so excited?
People are so grateful and so excited. Honestly, just that I picked the phone up and I'll spend time talking to them, or just customers that have come by for various reasons, and Mark will spend time talking with them about all sorts of things, from how to work their label or if it's a customer who's kind of new at this, just taking time to explain how this all works and how they can help us get their record out the door faster, because it's really a bit of a relationship that there's, we can press the vinyl, but there's lots of other parts in motion that we don't have control over. So helping them understand that, so that it's a little bit of a two-way street, I think they're really just thankful, and it's fun. It's exciting.
It's exciting for me. I mean, I'm like beyond excited. When I heard you guys were opening, we all had a little dance party in the office. It was really a big deal, because really the last several years when I took over the record label, my husband had officially quit pressing vinyl. So there were multiple albums that we never pressed on vinyl, because at that time, mid 2000s, it wasn't selling the way that, CDs were selling. So I started to sort of slowly get into the pressing after the first few years, because I was like, wait a second, people are buying this, and, it's coming back and all this stuff. And now, I mean, we can't imagine doing a release not on vinyl. We even just pressed 2 comedy albums on vinyl, which sounds crazy, but they're totally selling. I mean, people are buying them, which is funny, because we actually had one comedian ask us, now, how big is a record? Do I need a special bag to carry it in? I mean, we were like, have you been on Earth? Like, hello? It was odd. But, whatever. This is great. We're introducing a whole new group of people to, the wonders of vinyl. So I'm sure people are really excited. So does that mean that you guys are booked out right now pretty solidly? I mean, how's that going?
I feel like we're doing a pretty good job at managing it. We're about current capacity about 16 weeks out, but that stands to decrease as we bring additional presses online. And we're just really from the gate just trying to have an open, honest conversation with the people that call here. They'll say, well, what's your turnaround time, or when can you get it by? And I go, well, let's look at this from a different angle. What are your deadlines?
Right.
Like, what exactly are you trying to accomplish?
What do you need?
And maybe they give us a date, and we go, okay, well, how much flex is there in that? Let's see if there's a way that we can work this together. Maybe it means a little bit more work on your end. Maybe it means us doing things a little differently than we might normally. But if there's a way to figure this out, we will accept this job and let's do it. And if we can't, we tell them up front, rather than, we don't want to start off, especially, all our customers are new. But with a new customer, you don't want to start the relationship off by lying to them or misleading them. I mean, that's bananas. It's not going to work. And,
for so much of the process of vinyl, straight through from cutting all the way to delivery, is like the key to this is expectation management. And thankfully, there are a lot of very young people who are very enthusiastic about vinyl. That enthusiasm is real. And you don't want to jump down on that at all, but you do want to have a frank conversation with them about, this is how long this is going to take. Are you guys, booking a record release show or a tour? Okay, well, Amy would be better to talk to about this, but it's like, here's how we should line that print up to make sure that it gets here when the records are being pressed, so that the records aren't pressed and sitting for 2 weeks while we're waiting for your jackets to show up. And that if you've never done that before, that's not something that you would know.
See, I'm fascinated by that, because that suggests that you guys are having an educational component to this, which also implies that you have new people doing this, which to me is blowing my mind, that people are every day getting into the record business. You're like, which part of, this business has been collapsing do you guys not get? And yet, here we are, right? Certain areas are really growing.
They really are, and I've been impressed by how many independent artists have called and or walked in here that have never done this before and are willing to take it on and learn and figure out what's involved in getting a lacquer cut and how to work with an engineer, and the fact that we don't do electroplating here and that happens elsewhere, and all the little steps involved in getting their print here, and what's involved in that, and how they can help us out, and what we can do to help them get things done in a way so that when they're ready to go, we have all their parts and pieces here, we could press their run and get it out the door for them.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Mark, let's go back to something you said. You said that you're going to be bringing more presses online. How many presses do you have working right now?
2 right now.
2, but you own
6.
6. So, and what's your time frame for rolling those out?
We're hoping to have the whole line up by the end of summer.
Cool.
That's what we're shooting for.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty fast.
So they're actually the other 4 machines are very far along in the refurbishing process. Like we sort of advanced them all together to a point, and then when it came time to hook some of them up, we brought a couple of them home because it made more sense to us to have a complete setup and dial it in and have it functioning properly, and then replicate that, as opposed to sort of forcing through 6 sort of marginally well-running machines and then having to fight them all simultaneously. I mean, that just sounded like a nightmare.
Yeah.
So
good idea.
Yeah, we just want to start. Let's get some results. Let's be happy with this, and then let's do it again and again and again. And maybe along the way we find little improvements that we can and because all the machines are in slightly different conditions. They all have their different personalities and quirks, and we're having to address that. So then it's not just the same. It's not Groundhog Day with the same scenario over and over again. But yeah, that's where we are with that.
You guys are so measured and organized. I'm so impressed. Adam, I want to go back to something you told me because I think people are really interested in vinyl, where vinyl comes from, and how it's manufactured. And I think people worry like, oh, vinyl is terrible for the environment. But you were telling me that what vinyl is actually made out of is recycled.
Yeah, Twitter is way worse for the environment than vinyl.
I believe that to be true.
Yeah, not just the human environment. I mean, if you take like all the electricity that's needed to like run tweets, like vinyl is a cricket fart compared to that. So so it's the raw polycarbonate compound. There is some actual petroleum product in there, but it's a lot of it's recycled tires. It's mostly recycled tires, and when you take we were talking about the pieces of the record that get trimmed off at the end to make a smooth edge on the record. That's called flash. So all of the flash is recycled and mixed back in with virgin compound to make the record. And then there's also all of the records that fail QC. And we haven't taken a trip to the QC room yet, but that's a critical piece of any pressing operation. And so all the records that fail QC are, the center hole is punched out and they're reground as well. So it's largely recycled product.
Yeah, that's good to know. But you did say there's something called virgin vinyl.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, the little polycarbonate compounds, the thing that a record is kind of made out of, look like these little beads. They look like lentils. And so if you just get the polycarbonate compound to make records and you just make a record out of it, just those, that's called virgin vinyl. So it's a clean pressing with absolutely no regrind, no recycled part of it. And that's something that you will see. I have a Dead Boys repress of Young, Loud, and Snotty. And so it's, it was like the 180 gram deluxe virgin vinyl reissue. And I'm pretty sure I paid like $5 more than I needed to for that. And it's, that's something that's sold as part of kind of a marketing strategy.
Gotcha.
But it's, as we were chatting earlier, it's actually kind of better to have a little bit of the regrind in there because it makes for a quieter record.
That's so interesting. So the sound quality actually improves.
Yeah, the noise floor goes down. You get less hiss, less noise. You would have to ask a chemist why having something already heated up and then reground plastic mixed in with pure plastic makes it quieter. I don't know why that is, but it's a real thing.
Interesting.
Why do refried beans taste better? It's one of those
just do.
questions. They just do. Don't
It's
question
probably
it.
the same chemical
Don't
reason.
question the recipe. Just go with it.
Just go with it. Exactly. So we've been speaking to Adam Gonsalves, Amy Dragon, and Mark Rainey of Cascade Record Pressing. Thanks so much, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
I'm Portia Sabin. In a moment, we talk about Record Store Day with one of the people who founded it. Stay with us. Record Store Day was started in 2007 and takes place on the third Saturday of April every year. The event was a huge success right out of the box and has grown every year, with 532,000 albums being sold this year, a 12-year sales high for independent record stores. Michael Kurtz is one of the founders of Record Store Day, and he joins us from New York. Michael, welcome to the Future of What?
Hi, Portia. Glad to be here.
So, 500,000 albums sold in one day. That is a really big deal.
I think it is, especially for a person like myself who realizes that a quarter of those were 7-inch vinyl singles, and no one in the right mind would have thought that would have been possible 7 years ago.
So, can you explain to our listeners what led you and your partners to create Record Store Day?
Sure, but desperation is probably the most accurate word to describe it. About 8 years ago, a guy who runs a record store in Baltimore called the Soundgarden, his name is Brian, called me up and he said, basically, record stores are irrelevant. And I said, what do you mean? I'm trying to be the cheerleader for independent record stores. He goes, no, just face it, we're irrelevant. No girls shop in our store anymore. I have no female employees. My average age has gone of an employee from 25 to 50. No one cares about getting promos to listen to anymore. It used to be everybody fought over them to see who would get it. Now nobody cares because it's already out digitally before it comes. So it's like a big yawn. Because your job is to do something about it. And then I set about brainstorming to figure that out with my partners.
And you created Record Store Day, which basically is an opportunity once a year for labels and artists to put out something kind of special on vinyl.
It is that, Portia, but it's really more than that. It's funny. I'm not going to say this. It's going to sound like I'm name dropping, but what the hell? I'll do it anyway. Last night, I was hanging out with Keith Richards.
Whoa.
It was a playback for his new album that's coming out. A really cool record. But anyway, I got to speak to him for a few minutes, and really, I was saying to him, well, who's in your band? Is it Steve Jordan? He's like, yeah. He goes, it's my regular guys. They're like my family. It's my community. That's everything. And I thought to myself, as he's saying that, that's what Record Store Day is. Anytime you create an excuse for people to gather, and it's a good excuse, whether it's a party or a record store day, there's another thing that just sort of happens. It's like this level of excitement, and it's like going to a concert or something. On the business side, yes, it's all about that vinyl things, but from a perception side, it's way more than that. These record stores have, parties inside their stores. They have bands perform. They create special things. They'll like invite the local animal shelter to come out to adopt a kitten or a puppy or something. And it's all these different things that all collide at one time. And this happens internationally, by the way. It isn't just a U.S. phenomenon, but it's way beyond just the business side of things, which is really important. And it's why record stores are opening about one average a week, whereas 8 years ago we were closing probably 5 a week. So it's a lot of things.
Well, we were just talking in an earlier segment to Mark Rainey, who runs TKO Records in Orange County, and he also runs a record store. And he was talking about how last year the biggest selling item in his store on Record Store Day was a 7-inch by One Direction. And all day long, I know, which is like hilarious to think of, but all day long, he said 12-year-old girls were coming into his record store. And he was like, this might be the first time they've ever been in a record store.
No, it's that, that idea for doing One Direction came from a Canadian record store called Sunrise. The guy's like, why aren't we doing more things for teens? And my response was because I'd gone to labels, but, like Disney, I'd gone to see if we could do a couple things there, but they were a little hesitant to do it. But Columbia actually listened to us and said, okay, we'll take it to the band. The band was really into it, made this really hilarious picture disc that looked like they were like 70s, hair metal band. So they had a sense of humor about it. And it just really, they caught the spirit of the event and made it fun. And yes, we had all these teenagers come in, and I guess I should drop this statistic. We've gone from an average age of 50 to for a record store customer down. The average age now is about 20.
Wow.
So because and the majority of vinyl is being bought by teen girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really great thing to know because, every super fan and record store nerd that I know gets the list of Record Store Day releases in advance and then plans out what they're going to buy. So It's good to know that this event has actually grown to the point where it's not just super serving that customer, which is great. I'm happy that all of my record nerd friends are into this, but it's cool to know that we're bringing new people. It's bringing new people to the table.
It is. It's changed everything, and you can see it even from the layout in stores and what they carry. Like the Soundgarden, for example. Here it is, 8 years later. His store is unrecognizable from what it was when we first had the discussion, where he pretty much said that that I was a member of the bald spot and pony crowd, and that I was out of touch and something needed to be done about it. But seriously, he the store now is 50% vinyl. He just added on a whole nother, I think it's around a couple thousand square feet to his store, and it's all vinyl and turntables, and he's the turntable business has exploded. We had quite a few conversations with different manufacturers about how they can't even fill their back orders at this point. It's insane.
Earlier in this segment, we talked to the people who have started the new pressing plant out here in Portland, Cascade Record Pressing.
Yeah.
And that's so exciting to us because, of course, to have a new pressing plant is this, big deal because of exactly what you're just saying. We've had such backlogs where
Yeah.
people, you want to press a record, you want to put it out in November, and people are like, well, you'll have to start in, January.
No, it was really depressing, and Record Store Day took a lot of heat for that in the last year or so. People blamed us. They were like, "Oh, if it wasn't for you, people would be able to fill their orders." And the truth is, it's always taken a long time because vinyl's a whole different thing. You've got the cardboard sleeves, you got to glue it together, you got to the way it's manufactured, you have to let the vinyl cool before it's slid into the sleeves, and there's all this stuff. And then if you do colored vinyl, that slows it down even further. If you do picture discs, that slows it down even further. There's all these things that are happening, but of course we're at the vanguard of that because we kind of made it happen. But and for me, I have to pinch myself. I was during conversations because, like, for example, I had a meeting with the folks who run Q Prime, really well-known management company. They manage Muse and Dawes and Silver Sun Pickups and Metallica, a bunch of bands. Anyway, they're telling me that they just bought 2 brand new manufacturing units from Palace in Europe, 2 brand new ones. And that's the first I've heard of them because most of them have been refurbished. And I said, God, doesn't that make you nervous? They said, no, because we're going to manufacture our own records because we're tired of waiting in line, with everybody else. So now we're at the front of the line, and we will take over the spillover from everybody else's orders that can't get filled. And I was just listening to him going like, wow, the world sure has changed. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it really has changed. And it's so funny because I was doing research for this piece and I saw that, the height of vinyl, I mean, like once upon a time in America, it was all vinyl. That's how people put out records. And it was a height of something like 1.1 billion vinyl albums sold in the year 1981. And then down to 300,000 sold in 1993.
Yeah.
So a crash like that really took out a lot of the players because a lot of people who own pressing plants were like, forget it, I'm out. This format is done, goodbye.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then to the investment that it takes to start a pressing plant is huge.
Well, for conversation's sake, I should throw this out there. When I made my travels around the world to get Record Store Day off the ground, and like Japan and France and Amsterdam and London, it sounds really romantic, doesn't it? But actually, it really wasn't. It was a grueling experience, being on planes and being misunderstood in conversations. But seriously, like when I was in London, when they were the first country to come on board, the UK. And they were explaining to me that the music industry over there was so excited about CD was what it came. They actually took the lathes and the manufacturing units for vinyl and used them as filler in the foundations of their buildings for the new buildings they were putting up. And that's how confident that they were that was never coming back.
Wow. Yeah.
Over. So of course they wish they all had that now. But it's so funny that the whole sort of tactile part experience of vinyl and records and stuff it's just resurged. It's kind of magical and it's counterintuitive. It's not what I think most people would think where we would be right now. I don't know. I'm still kind of in awe of it.
Yeah. Well, you're like speaking about that, what do you love about vinyl?
I love the sound first and foremost, but I do love, I don't have as much free time now because I just have 2 newborns. They're, 2 kids. So they take up all my time. And in the nursery, I have that set up with streaming. because, I can put all the nursery songs and different things there. And those aren't records that I own. And so I enjoy the streaming aspect there. It's really fun. But when it comes to listening to records, then I'm like, I've got them sitting in my living room and I'm going, this is a record. This, I pull it out of the sleeve and I said, now we're going to listen to this record. And I drop the needle on, and just the experience is just, amazingly different. It's just a wonderful, warm experience, like watching one of your favorite movies or anything like that. It's just different. And especially if you're going to listen to an album from beginning to end.
And I always liked about albums myself was just that everything, because the sleeves are bigger, because the inserts are bigger, you can see everything better. It's like I felt like I could read it. You could sit there and listen and read the liner notes. And for some reason, that's just like a really satisfying thing to do.
I think that's a big part of it, in the artwork, and now that people are getting into all kinds of fun things, with posters and inserts and die cuts, and the creativity that's going into vinyl now is just mind-boggling. Records that play from the back to the front, or depending on where you drop the record, the needle on the album, you hear a different song, and just fun stuff. The hologram things that people are doing. I saw one for Rush recently. They did one where if you shine the light on the dead wax part of it, a hologram forms of the little, whatever that is. What is that? Octagon, or I forget what it. I'm not a huge Rush fan, but the little symbol they have. I don't know if it's a hexagram or I think it's a hexagram, and it floats in the air above the record. It's just so much fun. God, everything should be this fun.
It's true. There's a guy out here in Portland who does live lathe cuts.
Yeah.
Like, you can get him to come to your party,
Oh,
do a live lathe cut.
that's
It's
so
pretty
cool.
amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it that you touch on, like, the local bands and stuff now have something that, they can press and for their fans and stuff. It takes it back to the 80s. Like when I first started, when REM put out their first 7-inch on Hiptone Records, it was clearly, the sleeve was made on a Xerox machine, and, the 7-inch was, Radio Free Europe, which is a phenomenal song. Sitting Still was on the B-side, but it was such a great experience. And now I see young bands doing that again, and it's really cool. And I don't think it's done for like a, like they're trying to be something they're not or something. They're doing it because in this moment it actually makes sense.
I totally agree. Well, on that note, Michael Kurtz is a founder of Record Store Day. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on The Future of What?
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Keep playing those records. All right. Bye.
Bye. If you missed any of this program and you want to go back and listen, you can find us at killrockstars.com/thefutureofwhat. Or you can download our podcast from the iTunes store. The Future of What continues in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. I'm Portia Sabin, and this is The Future of What, a show about the recording industry. Today we're focusing on everything vinyl records. We're going to turn now to Darius Van Arman, co-owner of Secretly Group. Darius, thanks for joining us on The Future of What.
Thanks, Portia, for having me.
So, Global Street Date has happened. It is a reality. Can you explain for us what that actually means?
Sure. So, just July 10th of this year, there were different release dates for music throughout the world. For example, in Germany, things were released on a Friday. In the UK, music albums and releases were released on a Monday. In the US, on a Tuesday. There's a different day of the week in Australia as well. And the issue with it in the industry was when labels who were releasing records worldwide were putting music out, because it was coming out in one territory before another, and we're in a digital marketplace now, things leaked. And it also made it harder to market through international channels when a release date was. So there was this idea that let's have one global release date that is the common convention for when new record releases are put out into the market. And that's what global release date is, which there's, some good things about it and some bad things about it.
So I read the IFPI's report about, I guess it was just their annual report, and they quoted a UK retailer as saying, new music should hit the high street when people hit the high street. So, of course, that implies that, since in certain countries Friday is payday, that's when they want albums coming out so people can take their pay packet and go down the local record store and I'm pretending I'm British and purchase the new album. But this has caused some issues, right? Some people are not super happy about this.
Well, I think one, and this is affects small and medium-sized labels more so maybe, and this as well. I guess the question is whether a global marketplace is actually good for local markets. In the United States, for example, the way music retail has evolved, it became a convention that Tuesday is when music was put out into the racks of music stores, and the independent retail stores in the U.S. really embraced that, and they felt like they got two bites out of the apple. They got some music fans who came on release date on Tuesday to buy records, and then those same music fans, or others, not the same ones, or both, they returned on the weekends when they were looking for more music, and they felt like that was a good rhythm for them. And so one concern is from those independent retail stores is that, a global release date where everything's on Friday kind of is going to, on the aggregate, reduce foot traffic and maybe hurt their businesses. And there's other concerns, too, that when you have a global release date, it puts a little bit heavier weight on those artists and those releases that are top of the chart. It creates an easier road to there being a global event. Beyonce drops a record, it's a global event. And maybe that hurts diversity. Maybe that means it's harder for local markets to get local artists and local label repertoire, higher in the charts. It's to be seen. But it is something that's, whereas there's good from this in that it's maybe simpler to communicate what a release date is throughout the world, there's maybe some costs to local markets and how they best want to function, and also maybe to the diversity in those local markets and to what shows up on the charts, and maybe it contributes to bigger releases and bigger recording companies getting better placement on the charts. It's to be seen, but that's the concern.
There's also a concern about restocking, right? Isn't that something that U.S. retailers had been a little worried about, and labels?
Well, in the U.S., I think that is a concern because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think right now video games and DVDs are also stocked or released on Tuesdays. So by moving from a Tuesday release date to a Friday release date, just the music releases, now some stores feel like it's more expensive for them to rack the music. It might contribute, the fear is, to some stores deciding they're not going to carry music, those stores that carry video games and DVDs.
Isn't there also a concern that the album comes out on Friday and then there's a rush on it on Saturday and you go out of the store runs out of stock? You can't actually get or order new stock until Monday. So you sort of lose some sales in there because there's no way to restock.
Yes, for releases that are not top of the chart releases, you have a retail climate where those stores are maybe only taking a few copies in initially, because that's what the market can bear as far as sales in a short period of time for the smaller releases. And you're absolutely right that if those sales happen quickly on a weekend and you can't restock on a weekend because people and distribution channels aren't working on a weekend, it might affect those smaller releases. And I think that was one of the main concerns that some of the independent labels expressed when hearing news about this global release date.
So Darius, I've been asking all my guests since we're talking about vinyl today, what do you love about vinyl?
Well, the first time I listened to music was that was recorded, that wasn't on a television set or the radio, but was something that I could choose, how to play, when to play, and what track to play. That was vinyl. That was my first format. And so I'm nostalgic about it, but I also think that the vinyl experience, I don't want to get away from the argument that it sounds better or worse. I mean, I personally prefer how vinyl sounds, but I know others like how digital sounds. But I do love, and I think it's hard to argue with, the experience of putting a record on a table and actually sort of engaging the medium, picking up the needle, flipping the record over, holding the big record cover in your hand. If you're going to own a recording that's physically embodied on something, I'm hard pressed to think of a better format than the vinyl format.
Darius Van Arman is the co-owner of Secretly Group, and he joined us from his office in Bloomington, Indiana. Thank you so much, Darius, for being on The Future of What?
Thank you, Portia, for having me.
Confession is true. I think I'll try.
And that's the future of what? Today's music comes from the Peaches, Deerhoof, and Essential Logic. All the music is used by permission of the artist. If you missed any of this program and you want to go back and listen, you can find us at killrockstars.com/thefutureofwhat, or you can download our podcast from the iTunes store. The Future of What is produced by Will Watts and John Sepulvedo. Reed Harvey is our engineer. Special thanks to Digital One Studios in Portland, where we record. I'm Portia Sabin. Thanks for listening.